It's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So before we get into your life as an organizing expert and an author, I want to know one of the biggest things that we had to live through was this pandemic, surviving it, and it meant that we had to pivot and change and do all these things. How much of going through that time period has influenced and affected the way that you live life today?
Isn't it crazy that it was like nearly 5 years ago and
So
it feels
weird.
like it was just yesterday
Yeah.
or maybe last week? I don't know, maybe not that soon. But
Yeah.
I don't know if you were like this, but in 2019, I remember me and my little mastermind group, all the women in there, we were like, 2020 is so exciting, the thought of that.
Uh-huh.
In November, December, we were like, yes, this is going to be our year. We're going to get so clear on our vision because 2020, we can see clearly, like there's something symbolic about that.
Yeah.
So I knew that I was going to get really clear on my vision. I had very high hopes. I was really excited about it. I was working as a professional organizer at the time. I'm like, this is how I'm going to be clear on how do I scale my business? How do I serve my clients better? So, and then of course, March happens and
Yeah.
we're like, what the?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I did have a lot of changes and I did actually get very clear on my vision. So, 2020 really was I guess traumatic and things changed, but I really feel like lot more positive came out of it for me personally than negative.
Yeah.
I got very clear on how I want to serve my clients, and that actually led to me closing my Cloud9 organizing company, my business, oddly enough. I opened up a mastermind group, but I had done that in 2019. And so I put all of my love and focus into my Loving Your Home Club, not my mastermind, sorry, membership site.
Yeah.
And that was where my heart was because I knew that there was more to clutter than just the clutter itself. And so I really went into like a mindset sort of space, and being at home allowed me to do that. So really learned how to meditate in 2020, oddly enough. My whole business is home. So I just embraced that and I was at home. I couldn't go into other people's homes necessarily, but I could still teach them online, which is something I wanted to push myself to do. So I'm like, okay, universe, I hear you. I will start doing the online coaching. I did become a certified life coach. I am not a life coach. I think everybody's a quote unquote life coach, but
Yeah.
I got my certification so I could understand how to better support my clients, which was very helpful.
Yeah.
Um, I started, dabbling with the idea of writing a book and teaching people that way how to love your home and to not get caught up in all the clutter and chaos. So for me, it was very positive. It put me in the direction that I wanted to go anyway. I just was pushed to go there a little bit faster than I really wanted to go.
Yeah. It's interesting. I remember when it began, everybody was doing that cute little thing with Barbara Walters saying, "This is 2020," right?
Yeah.
And everybody was like all like cutesy. And then all of a sudden I almost forgot that because everything just got steamrolled so hard when the world shut down. But I almost feel like now that we're out of it, it's almost like there was a show on HBO called Left Behind, and it was about the rapture. And I remember it because I'm born on October 13th, and the rapture in that book was on October 14th. And I was like, why did they pick the day
Mm.
after I was born? And I was just kind of thinking about that. But I think about us now, this existential crossroads, this Robert Frost poem we had to come to. We all had to make a choice. There's a little more vigor than there was before. There's a little bit more vision. Everybody had to figure out why are we doing this? What are we doing? And then go from there.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. So it gave us clarity. It's like, are we just like, because I was before that kind of just going through the motions and just like, it gave me pause. And I had to make sure that what I was doing was actually creating the life that I wanted to be living. And a lot of the things that I was doing before 2020, it really wasn't leading me down the path that I wanted to get to. And I love that you say that we have a choice because I talk about that all the time. It just always comes down to choice.
Yeah, it is.
And do I want to choose to live in the chaos of the pandemic? And I've moved on from the pandemic, by the way. I don't talk about it very often, but it
Yeah,
did impact us. So do I want to choose to live in the doom and the gloom, or do I want to, make lemonade out of lemons, which
yeah,
is where, and I had to set very good boundaries around that because I was serious about that
yeah,
during 2020, 2021, even 2022. It's like, I'm done talking about this.
yeah,
We are not going to talk about all the horrible, terrible things that happened in 2020. And there were a lot of terrible personal things that happened to me as well. But I don't really dwell on it.
Yeah,
And I made that very clear with my family members. And then we just push forward and
that's
we're
it.
focusing on the sunny side of life. And I talk a lot about that in my book too, is focus is my name of my book is loving your home, clean up your focus, not your house.
Yeah.
So we get to choose what we focus on.
Speaking of focus, let's get into exactly what you do on a daily basis for a living. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, third graders, career day. The kid in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer him?
First of all, I love this question because I used to be a teacher. So I love,
Yeah.
I'd be like, well, when I was your age, I could not wait to grow up and be an adult and have my own house,
Uh-huh.
have my own job, make my own money, get married, have a husband, and have kids. That was what I wanted to be when I grew up, was be a mommy.
Yeah.
And then I grew up and I realized it's a lot harder than we think it is. So I had to teach myself to focus on the happy stuff and learn how to love my life even when it's hard. And so that's what I do on a daily basis. I teach people how to love their lives and their homes, even in the hard times. And so that's why I wrote a book.
Yeah.
And so I wrote all of that in my book so people can read that and learn how to love their homes and their lives.
So take me back to where you were born and raised, and what were these foundational elements that have allowed you to be organized and to help people be organized, literally and figuratively, with their lives?
It's a kind of a funny question because I don't know if the foundation of how I was raised taught me how to be organized. I guess maybe the opposite, like, you learn from like what not to do.
Right.
Our house was a mess when I was growing up. So I grew up in Matagorda, Texas,
Okay.
and it's a little coastal town kind of in between Galveston and Corpus Christi, because some people know those cities, but not a lot of people know Matagorda.
Yeah.
Very small little fishing town. I grew up in a trailer, very modest, excuse me, and we didn't have a whole lot, and the house was messy a lot. We were just comfortable, and I didn't
Yeah.
find any shame in that. However, I did have a little girl, a pivotal moment in my life, come over and spend the night with me. She's like, your house is a mess, and she was on the phone talking to somebody else. Their house is a mess, and I was like, oh, house is a mess. I never even noticed until somebody pointed it out to me.
Yeah.
So that may be the pivotal moment where I was like, you know what, my house is a mess.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't clean up the house because I was only a child, but I
Yeah.
did clean up my bedroom, and I was hyper aware and focused on how your environment really does make you feel different.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a comfortable home, but I have to admit, when I cleaned up my own personal clutter in my bedroom at, like, as an early teenager, I was like, wow, this actually does feel better. This
Yeah.
does make me feel more at peace, because sometimes when I was growing up, there was some chaos. There was fighting. My parents ended up in divorce, but had a great, fun, happy childhood.
Yeah.
However, there was stress, just a normal everyday life. But I was able to go to my little sanctuary in my bedroom, close the door, and just feel safe and secure in there. And I gave that to myself. Nobody else gave that to me. So I guess maybe that's how growing up in a little bit of a cluttered house kind of influenced the way that I live today.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this. Who's been that inspiration? Who's been that hero for you in your life, in your work, and the way that you view life? Who has been that person for you?
My friend Teresa,
Yeah.
Teresa Schloop, she has her own business as a web designer and is just like a phenom. She's been in my life since we were in third grade. And actually, she knows exactly what my life was when I was a child. And she says, your house was my favorite place to be because it was kind of cluttered,
Yeah.
because she lived in a home that was extremely tidy, very like regimented, and she felt uncomfortable all the time because it was too clean
Yep.
and it was too strict, and she'd come to my house and get to be normal.
Yeah.
So she pointed that out to me, which sounds like a small little thing, but I'm like, that was a good lesson for me to learn. It's like, yes, we have to be comfortable in our homes, and thank you for pointing that out to me, that I should not be embarrassed of where I grew up or
Yeah.
how I grew up. And she has taught me so much about business, about life. In 2020, I say that like I had some personal things happen to me. Really, it feels like me, but it really was her. She got diagnosed with cancer, had a terrible personal issue happen, and her life was falling apart. But she ended up pulling up her bootstraps, increasing her business by like buku amounts and became super successful while she was in this like dump of a time in her life. And that inspired me, continues to inspire me.
Yeah.
So I could go on and on about Teresa Schlup, but if you would just like to read Loving Your Home, Clean Up Your Focus, Not Your House, I looked it up. She is in here 99 times. So there's
Wow.
my influence.
There you
I was
go.
like, I had no idea. Her name, I call her Terry.
Okay.
So I looked it up. I'm like, wow, girl, you're in my book 99 times. So I think you might influence me a little bit.
Absolutely. So speaking of being a writer and having a book, what was the book for you growing up? What's one of your favorite books?
Oddly enough, I didn't read a lot when I was a child.
Okay.
I think I read my first book from cover to all the way through probably when I was in sixth grade, which to me, that's a little late. Like, I've got a child, my daughter is a voracious reader. And I made sure I read a lot to both my kids when they were little. And she will read like 100 books a year. I maybe read 5 books. So I don't actually have, I mean, it's not a very like, oh, that's fun, a fun answer. I don't have a story to tell you or a book that influenced me because I didn't read a lot as a child. But I think but I was always good at reading and writing. So I think that's probably why it was on my bucket list to write a book because it felt like so big, like an author, that's just unattainable. Like
Yeah.
that's like only really smart people write books, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's what I told myself.
Yeah.
So
I get it. I didn't read until in my 20s. I mean, I read in school, they'd assign Lord of the Ring or Lord of the Flies, those kinds of things, but I really didn't grab onto it until I got into college and I read John Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath, and then just from there it was just a tidal wave. So yeah, I
yeah.
have the same kind of answer. I totally get it. So let me ask you this. If you can meet one person on the planet right now that you feel is inspiring or organized or somebody that might help you on your path and hang out with them and have a little time with them, who would that be?
Mm. My favorite professional organizer slash organizing expert is a lady named Cassandra Arison. So she's not an Oprah or a Mel Robbins,
Yeah,
but if you're in the organizing world, you probably know who Cassandra Arison is. She is highly, I think she has ADHD and she's very, very highly ADHD. Like she has to take medication and she's very organized. However, she has to be organized. Otherwise, life just gets away from her. She's a
yeah,
fascinating human.
yeah,
She is now she lives in Canada. She's now a trained firefighter. So her brain goes all a million different directions at
yeah,
once. And I would love to pick her brain and understand how do you go from one direction to the next and still like stay sane and be able to have a show on HGTV and have a best-selling book and be this YouTube phenom. Like, how do you do all that? I would love to pick
yeah.
her brain because her brain is much different than mine. She has 4 organizing types that she's identified. And she taught me that. I didn't know that we all organize differently. So when I learned that from her, it was life changing for me. I was able to better help my family, who none of them organize like me. None of their brains work like mine do, and my organizing clients as well. So some of us need it to look a little chaotic, and some of us need it to be completely tidy and organized rainbow color, which is more like how I am. But the rest
Yeah,
of my family, they need to drop their shoes on the floor,
yeah,
and that is okay because otherwise it's still organized to them because
yeah,
they can find it. So anyway, she fascinates me the way her
yeah.
brain works.
But that's interesting that there's organizing types because I think about,
Mhm.
the love languages and all of those things. It's like there's definitely a rubric that we all fall into, and we fall into
Absolutely.
it for deeply embedded psychological reasons that we've kind of followed in our lives, you
Yeah.
know. Um, so let me ask you this. How do you balance and organize your life? How is it that you take on some heavy things of helping people get organized, but you also have to evolve and take care of yourself as a human being? What gets you up every day to operate at the highest level that you can?
I think I'm one of those lucky, I feel like it's rare. I'm so excited to wake up every morning because I'm like, I get to do something that I love. Even just
Yeah.
talking to you, I'm like, oh yeah, I get to meet Joe and talk to Joe today. That's exciting.
Yeah.
So I make sure I schedule fun things into my day every single day.
Yep.
Aside from just, I love to write, but I've got to get away from the computer and stop writing so much.
Yeah.
So I just reached out this morning to 2 friends. I'm like, please, let's get on the schedule. I have to have coffee and go for a walk. Um, we're blessed to have a ranch in another city. So I'm going to start also having ranch time by myself and just recharging my batteries that way and getting away. I never do that. So this year, once a month, I'm going to go just for one day and say goodbye, family.
Yeah.
And just setting boundaries is really big for me. And that personal friend time gets me excited. And I love the work that I do, but I get tired of talking about organizing.
Yeah.
And I don't even really organize, I declutter. Declutter really is what I
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
like getting the stuff out of your house.
Yeah.
So hopefully that answered your
It
question.
it totally does. So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight and you ran into a much younger version of you, say 17, 18 years old, and you can give that version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've accumulated over time, what advice would you impart on that young version of you?
So I actually have a picture of my 10-year-old self right here. I'll just show it to
Yeah,
you.
sure.
And I talk to her all the time. And
Yeah.
so she's not 17,
Yeah.
she's 10 years old. And I
Sure.
always hated this picture.
Yeah.
I don't know why. There was something, I think it's because I was not confident here.
Yeah.
I don't know. So that was a really rough age for me. So I've already talked to her. I already tell her, it's like, I got you.
Yeah.
You are safe.
Yeah.
I promise you, I'm going to take care of you the rest of your life. And I'm not going to tell you everything amazing that you're going to do, but you're going to do some pretty cool things.
Yeah.
You're going to, I was the slowest one ever, like PE running around the gym. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Guess what? You're going to run a marathon one day.
Yeah.
And you're going to be 50 years old when you do it. You're not even going to be young.
Yeah.
So I promise you, everything is going to work out exactly like you hope it will. And you're going to marry a cute boy and you're going to have cute babies and going to have a great life. So I would just reassure my younger self that everything's going to work out exactly like it's supposed to. And the struggle is worth it. It's
Yeah.
okay. You're going to get through the other side. And you kind of have to struggle a little bit.
Yeah.
You're going to have to be challenged so you can
Yeah.
learn those lessons.
What a great answer. So let me ask you this. Of everything that you've done and accomplished and done to protect and evolve from that 10-year-old self to now, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
I would say probably my marriage.
Yeah.
I think that for me, everybody says, or at least my friends, "Ooh, raising kids is the hardest thing I've ever done." And I have to admit that marriage is probably the hardest thing that I've ever done. And my husband knows that. I've said this is the hardest thing I've ever done
Yeah.
because you have to meld two personalities into one unit and work as a team. And we don't always agree on how things should be done. So compromise actually on my end was more difficult for me than for him because he's like, whatever you want. Just yeah,
Yeah.
we'll do it however you want. So I've had to learn to be a better version of myself in order to support that relationship of marriage. And I'm pretty dang proud of myself that I have learned how to do that.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone around you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I feel very successful. I think that I am somebody who when they say they are going to do it, they do it. And to me, success is totally different than what other people probably traditionally think success. Like if I check it off of I wrote a book, check, check, I'm successful. I ran a marathon, check, I'm successful. I have a marriage that is very fulfilling, check, I'm successful. So I feel successful and fulfilled, and I'm also very chill. I look at myself as a very chill, calm person too.
Yeah.
That's my perception of myself.
I love it. So if anyone wants to pick up a copy of your book, they want to hire you, reach out, any questions, any of the good business, where can they go?
Well, you can go to my website, which is crystalnerpel.com. I know that's a weird name. So maybe if you could put a link somewhere, Nerpel.
Sure.
And you can find my book there or on Amazon. And right now, that is my focus is the book. So feel free to reach out to me. You can connect with me on Instagram if you have any organizing, decluttering, loving your home questions. I am happy to answer any questions, but I currently do not organize for people, just to make that very clear.
Okay.
So I don't go into people's homes anymore and organize. I
Okay.
sunsetted that business to focus in on more of the mindset aspect.
Okay. Crystal, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it.